Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Melodious Yugioh deck profile for November 2023. We actually did get some support for Melodious back during the Maze of Memories booster set. Never actually got around to updating it. I guess you could technically call it support for also Lunalights, Lyra Lusks, and also Melodious on top of Wind Witches. But, I believe I may have updated Lunalights by then, and we do, maybe we'll update the other ones eventually, but wanted to start off with Melodious. They were the deck that I haven't updated the most recently, and with just some of the other fusion support and some other extra deck cards we have gotten recently more available for the deck, I figured with some of those numbers changing, it definitely could use an update. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. A good majority of the Melodious monsters just focus on being able to gain different card effects when they are special summoned out onto the field. One of the easiest ones to special summon is Sonata, the Melodious Diva. If you control a Melodious monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. While this card is special summoned on the field, all fairy monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense, so it's just an added boost. And for the fact that Sonata is not once per turn, if you have multiples of this card in your hand and you just control a Melodious monster, you can special summon this card onto the field and stack all of the attack gain for your fairy monsters for some pretty big buffs, like I said, depending on how many Sonatas you may have on the field to use. So definite three of, the other three of being our Soprano, the Melodious Songstress. Fusion summoning out our Melodious monsters is another big part of the deck. So with Soprano, the Melodious Songstress, when this card is special summoned, you can target one Melodious monster in your graveyard except for Soprano and add it to your hand. You can only use this effect of Soprano, the Melodious Songstress, once per turn. And once per turn, you can fusion summon one Melodious monster from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion material, including this card. So your main play with this would obviously be to go into Schuberta, the Melodious Maestra, just needing two Melodious monsters for the summon. You can summon out your Soprano, getting back a search, and then also summon out Sonata from your hand by just controlling that Melodious monster and then needing the fusion play right then and there using those two monsters to summon that card out. The add back effect is also good for one of the other fairy plays I'm using in the deck to stop opponents' monster effects. But before we get to that, more of the Melodious 3-ofs being 3 copies of Cannon, the Melodious Diva. If you control a Melodious monster, you can special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon Cannon once per turn this way. And once per turn, you can target one Melodious monster you control and change its battle position. So more of a defensive lineup. You do have the Sonata and Cannon special summons to rely on. Cannon is a once per turn, but Sonata is not. But you can have the attack power with Sonata and then use cards like Cannon to at least switch the defense or even our extra deck monsters for our Melodious on the field using this card. For some of the lower numbers for the Melodious cards, I also run 2 copies of Araya, the Melodious Diva. While this special summon cards on the field, Melodious monsters you control cannot be targeted by card effects or be destroyed by battle. So this is a great protection card for your Melodious cards. The only reason we run 2 though is because it has to be special summoned out by other means. So whether you add it back to your hand for search power with cards like Soprano, or special summon it off of some of your other bigger monsters, which we'll get to in just a second, you really only can special summon it off of the card effects, so you really don't have a direct way to summon it from your hand. We do have other cards in the deck, like our First Movement solo, that can help with getting this card out onto the field. And I also run 2 copies of Mozarta, the Melodious Maestra. Now, the Melodious Maestras are also important for summoning out some of our other fusion monsters like Bloom Diva and also Bloom Prima onto the field, both requiring a Melodious Maestra to make. With Mozarta, once per turn, you can special summon one light fairy monster from your hand. You cannot special summon other monsters the turn you activate this effect, except for light monsters. So you can even summon out another Mozarta onto the field using Mozarta, and then use that Mozarta to summon out one additional one. This can also help with the special summon play, like let's say you have Araya in your hand. You can use Mozarta to special summon out the Araya onto the field. Then the special summon effect is active of your Araya, having the option to not be destroyed by battle, and then also be targeted by card effects. You can special summon out Sonata to gain the additional attack boost. It helps with all the field swarming that your Melodious monsters can do. And also the 2 copies of Shapina, the Melodious Maestra. Once per turn, you can target a light fairy monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. You cannot activate non-light monster effects during the turn you activate this effect. Well, not too big of a problem. It just helps for that add back power, as I mentioned before. Adding back cards that can be easily special summoned, I'd say, is your best go-to there. But you also have fusion plays in the deck, so being able to add those resources and just a light fairy monster in your graveyard back to your hand is a big help also. And I also run 2 copies of Elegy, the Melodious Diva. Special summon Melodious monsters cannot be destroyed by card effects. If this card is special summon, all fairy monsters you control gain 300 attack. So combined with this card and Araya, making it so your opponent cannot target your cards by card effects, and they can't be destroyed by battle. And then also they cannot be destroyed by card effects. If you have Elegy and Araya on the field, that's a pretty difficult wall to get over since they can't even be targeted or destroyed by card effects or battle. Your opponent's going to have a difficult time getting over those monsters to begin with in general. But the same premise as Araya, you have to special summon this card out initially, meaning you have to rely on other cards to do so. That's why we're only running the lower number, with the last of the Melodious monsters being the 1 copy of Score, the Melodious Diva. During either player's turn, during damage calc, if a Melodious monster you control battles an opponent's monster, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to change the opponent's monster's attack and defense to 0 to the end of this turn. So it's my take on the Honest play, adding this as a Melodious monster just as an added discard search power. It doesn't happen as often, that's why I'm not running Honest in the deck, but still an added option for the discard to use to then reduce that opponent's monster's attack and defense to 0. And we're also running 3 copies of Brilliant Rose. This card was released in Power of the Elements. It's always treated as a Gem Knight card. I really wish they would have treated it as a Melodious one also, but you can discard 1 Gem Knight or Melodious card to special summon this card from your hand. You go against this effect of Brilliant Rose once per turn. Once per turn, you can send 1 Gem Knight or Melodious monster from your extra deck to the graveyard. Till the end phase, this card's name, type, and attribute become the same as that original name, type, and attribute of that monster set. So you can send your other Melodious cards with this one. Being able to send cards like Schuberta to then get a Melodious Maestra on the field is a big part of why I like this card in the deck. If you didn't want to run Brilliant Rose, you can always take it out for a hand trap option, like if you wanted to run Effect Veiler or Ash Blossom, this could be the spot just to remove the Brilliant Rose to add those cards in. And the last of the monsters, one I definitely do like in the deck, is Herald of the Orange Light. This card was at 1 for a good while, but now with the recent list, it is back to 3. When your opponent activates a monster effect, quick effect, you can send this card and 1 other fairy from your hand to the graveyard to negate the activation and destroy it. So what I like about this is you can use the other fairy monster, sending it and your Herald of the Orange Light to the graveyard to stop and destroy that opponent's monster that activated their effect. You set up the Melodious monster that you sent to the graveyard off of your card, and for that play, you can activate earlier in the game cards like Soprano when it's special summoned to target a Melodious monster and add it back to your hand. So then you have the first movement solo to special summon out Soprano. Soprano can then add back the Sonata, or if you have Herald of the Orange Light in the graveyard, it's why I also like running the added option of our Melodious options for the Shopina, the Melodious Maestra, because you just target a light fairy monster in your graveyard and add back to your hand. So then you can just add Herald of the Orange Light back to your hand to reuse also. And that's it for the main deck monsters. We'll now move on to the spells. I run 3 copies of First Movement Solo. If you control no monsters, special summon 1 level 4 lower Melodious monster from your hand or deck. You can only activate 1 First Movement Solo per turn. You cannot special summon monster the turn you activate this effect except for Melodious monsters. So once again, another great thing, you have just the Herald of the Orange Light to act as more of a hand trap in your hand to use, and the majority of the time you're just going to be summoning Melodious monsters to begin with anyway, whether it be from your main deck or your extra deck. First Movement Solo just helps to initiate those plays. As I said before, you have the discard play with your Herald of the Orange Light and your other Melodious monster. You use First Movement Solo to summon out your Soprano. Soprano can then add back the Melodious monster to then special summon it, especially if it's cards like Cannon or Sonata. For more fusion options, I also run 3 copies of Ostinato. If you control no monsters, fusion summon 1 Melodious fusion monster from your extra deck using 2 monsters from your hand and or deck as fusion materials. During the end phase of this turn, destroy the monster fusion summoned by this effect. And if you do, all fusion monsters that were used for its fusion summon in your graveyard, you can special summon all of them. So what's also cool about this play is depending on what you send to the graveyard, if you go for the Schuberta play, you can send your 2 Melodious monsters being your Araya and also, let's say, another one being Elegy. So you have your Schuberta out on the field. Then when they're destroyed, you can summon both of these cards back onto the field, activating both of their effects for more of a defensive strategy when you summon them out to the field to begin with and having your fusion play to go for. Or you can even send one of your Maestro monsters and a Melodious to the graveyard from the deck to then summon these cards back to also have just reusable cards also during the next turn. And then for the new card from Maze of Memories, I also run 3 copies of Kahayore Getsu. And equip spell, you special summon 1 level 4 or lower fairy, spellcaster, wing beast, or beast warrior monster from your hand. If you do equip it with this card, then you can return all dragon monsters on the field of the hand. During the end phase of this card is in the graveyard, because it was sent there from the spell and trap card zone this turn while face up, you can add 1 polymerization spell, or fusion parasite from your deck to your hand. So just having a polymerization search in the form of an equip spell is why I also like this card in the deck, but it also works very, very well because then you just have the activation of this card to special summon a Melodious monster from your hand. So depending on the Melodious monster, you can benefit from that special summon, especially with cards like Araya, just to be able to summon them out onto the field. And then when it's sent, even if you were to send it from the spell and trap cards onto the graveyard, you have the search power because you can then use your 2 Melodious monsters, including your Kahayore Getsu, to then go for a link play and get that fusion search as well. I also run the 2 copies of Pot of Prosperity for more of the search power. You may just need that particular card for your play if you're looking for that first movement solo, or even just one of your go-to Melodious monsters. And also the 2 polymerization, you have the other fusion cards in the form of Soprano and Ostinato. So that's why I'm only running 2 of this card. This card's also searchable with Kahayore Getsu, so that's really all we have to rely on for this last spot, with the only traps that we run in the deck being 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. It makes it so each player can only control 1 type of monster, which the majority for your monsters are going to be just fairy monsters to begin with, so you can shut down a good number of decks using this card alone. If you wanted to run Infinite Impermanence, you can always replace this card for that spot in the deck. That's it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. Now, the one extra deck card, I don't know where I put my copies of Schuberta, the Melodious Maestra. It's the only thing I am missing from the extra deck. So for that spot, you can replace it with the 1 Garura and 2 additional Link monsters. You do want to run it though. Schuberta just helps just needing 2 Melodious monsters to summon it out onto the field. But I am running the 2 copies of Bloom Diva, the Melodious Choir. It cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. Also, you take no battle damage from attacks involving this card. If this card battles a special summon monster after damage calc, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to the difference between the original attack of that opponent's monster and this card, and then destroy that opponent's monster. So more of a difficult card to get over, but still it goes for more of the burn damage against your opponent, just needing a Melodious Maestro monster and 1 Melodious monster to summon this card. The 1 copy of Bloom Prima, the Melodious Choir. This card gains 300 attack for each fusion material used for it, needing a Melodious Maestra and 1 or more of the Melodious monsters to make it. So then you have more of the options with this card as well, being able to make a second attack during each battle phase. And if it's sent from to the graveyard, you can target 1 Melodious monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. So more recycle power as well if this fusion summon card is just sent to the graveyard. Now, this next spot would be the Schuberta spot. Just have the placeholder here with the Garura needing 2 monsters of the same type and attribute. But once again, Schuberta, the Melodious Maestro, will be in this one spot here with just the 2 generic Link monsters or the fusion spot. But it is a definite 3 of being one of the more generic monsters to be able to make in the deck. And also for the Link monsters, probably one of the most important one is our Melodious Link monster, Bloom Harmonious, the Melodious Composer. What is also funny is that even though it's probably one of the more under-supported Melodious compared to the other Dimension counterparts for Arc 5, it is the only one with a Link monsters. Lyra Lusks and also Luna Lights and Wind Witches still need to get a Link monster, but needing 2 fairy monsters, if this card's Link summoned, you can discard 1 card to special summon 2 Melodious monsters with different levels from your deck. 2 zones this card points to. In defense, you cannot special summon the turn you activate this effect except for Melodious monsters. You can only use this effect of Bloom Harmonious, the Melodious Composer, once per turn. If a Melodious monster this card points to attacks, your opponent can activate card effects to the end of damage step. An incredible Link 2 monster just for that setup that it can do quite easily with the Ostinato, just with its own card effect. It can be Ash Blossom that's your biggest risk with this card, but still, if you do get that setup, then it's just a great way to resolve the different level Melodious monsters we run. And also, just needing 2 fairy monsters, if you had to use Herald of the Orange Light, you could for this card. And it's not a Melodious Maestro, so remember that is a Melodious Composer. So sadly, you cannot use this Link monster for a, fusion summon of your other Melodious if it calls for the Melodious Maestro spot. Also, the 1 copy of Herald of Mirage Lights, the 1 IP Masquerena, and the 1 Nightmare Unicorn. Needless to say, you could always use Bloom Harnessed for other Link summons. And for the Xyz monsters, the 1 copy of Baguska, 1 Star Liege Paladynamo, and the 1 Super Star Slayer Typhon Sky Crisis for the potential Xyz monster you can summon out also. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, the special summon of your Link monster especially can help with a good amount of plays. I mentioned before with the fusion plays with Ostinato, but if you just have, let's say, a normal summon and a special summon of a Melodious monster, you can normal summon out your Soprano, then special summon out your Cannon. If you didn't want to go for the fusion play, you can fusion summon with this card. You can even just go for the Link 2 play, summoning out your Bloom Harmonist onto the field. And when it's Link summon, just discarding a card. So depending on the random card you discard to the graveyard, you'll get the special summon of your 2 Melodious monsters with different levels from your deck to zones that this card points to. So then you could summon out, if you wish, you can either go for your protection play, which the one for that would be to summon out your Araya onto the field. So you can summon out your Araya. And then you can also additionally summon out an additional monster, being the add back power of your Shopina, because your Araya is now protecting your Melodious monsters from being destroyed by battle. You can use Shopina to add 1 additional monster back. So the better play, because Cannon is a once per turn, if you had the Sonata to summon back, because if you normal summoned out your Soprano and summoned out your Sonata with the special summon and went for the Link 2 play, you can at least add back the Sonata since it's not a once per turn and have another special summon onto the field for more and more of your Melodious setup using those monsters. And then having the additional effect if you were to attack the following turn, like if this was your turn 1, to attack and then use your Link monster for the fact that your opponent can't activate anything when your Melodious monster attacks. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. I always love the Melodious deck, and once again, I apologize for not having the Shubertas. I don't know where they went, just a rare fusion that I misplaced somewhere, but the spot that you'd replace for them, as I mentioned before, with the Garura and the 2 additional Link monsters. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.